Welcome everyone. We're just going to give it a couple of minutes until everyone has managed to stream in before we start the webinar. Good morning, good afternoon and good evening to you all, and welcome to our third webinar of the series, Accelerating Progress Towards the Sustainable Development Goals in the Post-COVID Era, the Role of Universities. Today we are delighted to welcome our partners from KTH Royal Institute of Technology, the highest ranked technological university in Sweden. The team from KTH will focus today on their sustainable development journey and give their perspective of the future strategy of universities. As we've discussed over the last 2 weeks, universities play an integral role in the attainment of the SDGs. However, integrating sustainable development across the institutional operations is a huge undertaking, which needs commitment and good leadership. KTH is a global leader in this area, integrating sustainable development across education, research, collaborations, and university services. And I, for one, am really looking forward to learning more about their journey and future plans in today's webinar, which will be led by Joren Finveden and Christina van Orich. So with my quick overview, I'd like to now hand over to Joren for today's webinar. Thanks very much, Joren.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction, and thank you for organizing this very interesting webinar series. It's very timely and a lot of interesting presentations in the series. I'll talk a little bit about our journey on sustainability, and then I will hand over to Christina von Oelreich, who will talk more about where we are now and where we are heading. My name is Joran Finveden. I'm a professor at the Department of Sustainable Development, Environmental Sciences and Engineering at KTH. I was Vice President for Sustainable Development for nearly 10 years. I ended my service in that position just a couple of months ago. Just a few words about KTH. It's an acronym, Swedish acronym for Royal Institute of Technology. We're situated in Stockholm, and this is a picture of our main campus area with the oldest parts in the center. We're Sweden's oldest and largest technical university, approximately 15,000 students, plus 2,000 research students. We're slightly more than 5,000 employees in total. We could say that our sustainability journey restarted in 2011. Before that, there had been many initiatives, many projects that had sort of risen, and then when the funding stopped for one reason or another, it went down again. So we can say that this systematic work started 2011, 10 years ago now, and it was based on a review that was made the year before, and it concluded that we really needed to step up. So our president at that time took three important decisions. One was to appoint a vice president for sustainable development with a focus on the academic part. We have had vice president for research, for education, for international relations, etc. But this was the first time we appointed a vice president for sustainable development, and I was lucky to be that person. Another decision was to appoint an environmental manager, and later we changed the title to sustainability manager, and Christina von Elreich, who you will meet later, is the current sustainability manager. And the environmental manager, sustainability manager should have a focus more on the direct impacts and management. And then the third decision was that we should have an ISO 14001 certified environmental management system, and we are certified since 6 years ago. I think when these decisions were taken, the idea was that the academic parts were quite different from the internal impacts and the management parts, so that we really should have these separate. But we soon realized that we needed to work very closely together, and we have done that. And this is because if I go out as a vice president, when I went out as vice president and wanted to talk about the academic parts, I immediately got questions about our waste management system or our flying habits or whatever. So we needed, in order to be trustworthy in the academic parts, we needed to work very much on our own impacts as well. And vice versa. When we started working on the environmental management system, we of course realized that our teaching, our education, and our research are fundamentally important when we want to improve on our sustainability track record. So we need to integrate these parts. And this is sort of shown in our sustainability, in our policy for sustainable development. This is the first part of that we want to be a leading technical university in sustainable development and actively and responsibly contribute to sustainable development. And then comes through education, research, and collaboration. So that comes first because that's our most important impacts on sustainability, but then also by reducing environmental impacts from our operations and promoting social responsibility. So we need to have both these aspects going hand in hand. And of course, nowadays, the Sustainable Development Goals is very much backbone and the fundament of our work in this area. In hindsight, perhaps, I'd like to describe our strategy for sustainable development, for the integration of sustainable development, as a triple double track strategy. So the first double track strategy is to focus, as I talked about, focus both on core activities and campus activities. So core activities, education, research, collaboration, but also on campus activities. We need to focus on both. The second double track strategy is integration and specialization. We often hear discussion whether we should integrate sustainability into everything or whether it should be something specialized. And I say that we need to have both. In order to be able to integrate sustainability in our core activities, we need specialists. We need specialists in our faculty and also in our service operations. So we need specialists to help us integrate into the core activities. And the third double track strategy is top down and bottom up. We need to have a clear top-down, top management commitment that is clearly communicated, and in order to enable bottom-up initiatives. So I see very much the top-down perspective, the top management commitment as a way of enabling the enthusiasts, the people that want to be engaged in sustainability, and then that's a way of supporting the bottom-up activities. So we need both top-down and bottom-up, and I'll come back to that in a moment as well. This was our sustainability goals for the period 2016 to 2020, and I show them to show that we cover these broad areas: education, research, collaboration, work environment. We put in parentheses because it was not the task of the sustainability office to work with that area. And then, of course, our campuses, our buildings, etc., traveling, purchasing and procurement, management of chemicals, organization and management of donation of foundations. And then we added some climate targets for the period 2020 to 2045. So this was our targets until last year, and we have done some follow-ups on that, and based on that we decided on new targets, and Christina will talk more about those later. I don't have time to go talk about all these targets, etc. I'll focus on education as an illustration of how we work, and since of course it's a very important area. So for education, we have had several objectives. One of them, perhaps the most central one, is that sustainable development shall be integrated into all educational programs at all levels, so that students can contribute to the sustainable development of society after graduation. So there are some key aspects to this, all educational programs, so also both on basic, advanced, and research levels. And also we say something about how it shall be integrated so that students can contribute to the sustainable development. So it's not enough just to have some small part somewhere during the 3 or 5 year programs, but it needs to be enough to give the students enough skills so that they can contribute to sustainable development after graduation. And this, as I talked about, we've used this top-down and bottom-up perspective, and this is very clear in our way of how we worked with education. The top-down is that we have this top-level decision that sustainable development shall be integrated into all programs, and we also have a continuous follow-up, and I'll talk about that as well. And that's important, not just to put up a goal, but also to follow it up. And then we have a lot of bottom-up activities. We support initiatives and provide tools and support from program directors and teaching staff to achieve the goals set by the university. So what have we done more in practice then? Well, if we start with a bottom-up sort of perspective, in a participatory process, we defined learning outcomes for sustainable development. So in order to help program directors to define what they need to integrate into their programs, we had a list that was supported by the faculty council as well, that these are the learning outcomes that our program students should achieve. We have also done a mapping of courses with sustainability relevance. Some time ago, there were 764 courses. It's probably a bit more now because it is increasing. We provide some coaching support of coaching and the teachers and program directors to help them. We developed a pedagogical course, Learning for Sustainable Development, 4.5 credits, which is open for all teaching staff. So there they will learn more about how to integrate sustainable development in their programs and in their courses. And this course is then specifically on sustainable development, but we have integrated it in several other pedagogical courses as well. We also a new recruitment and an associate professor in learning for sustainable development to further emphasize that this is an important area. We've developed a web-based toolbox for teaching staff. We have developed 3 1.5 credit modules that can be integrated into courses. One introduction module, one on social sustainability, and one on sustainable business development. We have lots of seminars and networking activities to support teachers and program directors. We can provide some seed funding for developing new courses. Not much, but to our experience, it's important that the funding is there, that it's possible to apply for it and get some funding. The amount may not be so large, and maybe that's not always necessary. But if they get some funding, they feel obliged to deliver something on it as well. We also have a career survey where we ask alumni after graduation how they how about their work experience. So it's a general survey, but we have a couple of questions related to sustainable development there as well. And it's kind of interesting, the results, that about 3/4 of our alumni, so 3/4, a couple of years after the graduation, uh, work with sustainability related issues. In general, it's not their prime focus, but they come across sustainability challenges that they need to be able to make some evaluations or some judgments about the sustainability of their project. So 3/4 of our students. So of course we need to prepare them for that. And that's an increasing number over the years as well. We also do a midterm student survey where we ask the current students about how they experience their sustainability education at the university. So that was sort of the bottom-up perspective. What we do then top-down? Well, we've made this clear, these goals quite clear, and then we also do a follow-up. And this has been a systematic work through the years. In 2011, we did an education assessment exercise. So that was sort of a parallel to research assessment exercise, but focusing on education in general. But we got some questions and aspects related to sustainable development integrated into that assessment. And they pointed at the needs for integration of sustainable development in our programs. So in 2012, we made the decisions on the sustainability goals for education, and then we asked all engineering and architect programs to do a self-assessment. And then we did a follow-up dialogue with the schools. We looked at their self-assessment, and then we went out and talked to the schools about the self-assessments. And based on that, all the schools set up an action program for integration of sustainable development into their engineering and architect programs. And then they worked with that program. And then 2015, we did a new follow-up. We could clearly see that there were progress and lots of ongoing activities, but still need for further work. In 2016, we decided on new sustainability goals, and I showed one example of that. And we also integrated this follow-up now in the environmental management system. And then we asked also for action programs, not only for our engineering and architect programs, but also for our master's programs and also for our doctoral programs, research programs. All programs then were asked to map and motivate how they connect to the SDGs. And then 2019, we integrated the follow-up of sustainable development in our programs in our quality process. So now it was sort of double track integrated both in our environmental management system and in our quality processes. But we are sort of slowly shifting towards integrating it fully in our quality processes. And then if we see that it works fine, then perhaps we can leave it out of the environmental management system. We're not really there yet. And then last year we did a new follow-up, and it was quite an innovative way, I would say, new way. We did lots of thinking about it, so I'll say a few words about it. And based on that, we formulated some new sustainable development goals for education. So the aspects in the evaluation, we wanted to avoid a tough self-evaluation. All program directors and teachers are so tired of self-evaluations. So we didn't want them to do that. So we looked at the programs and asked them some very simple questions. For the programs, are there any sustainable development related program objectives? All programs have program objectives, so they should be able to answer that quickly. We also looked at, is there an introduction to sustainable development at an early stage of the program? And then we looked at the number of compulsory courses with minor sustainable development learning experiences. So we focused on the compulsory courses to really see what are sort of the minimum level in the programs. It's not enough. We don't think it's enough if students can choose sustainability, because then some will not choose it and then they will pass through the system without getting enough knowledge. So we focused on the compulsory courses, and then we did the differentiation between courses including minor sustainable development learning experiences and substantial sustainable development learning experiences. So minor could be a course module corresponding to perhaps a week's study or something like that, an assignment, short assignment, something like that. And a substantial sustainable development learning experience should be something about perhaps a whole course, 5-week course, or perhaps a very significant part in a larger course. And then we separated also courses which develop students' knowledge and courses that develop students' knowledge and skills, because we soon realized that many courses provides knowledge about sustainable development, but we don't think that's enough, because we want our students to be able to contribute to sustainable development. So they also must have some skills how to do that, how they can integrate sustainability in their normal work as engineers or architects or other graduates. And then we looked at development plans and processes, and then we looked at a new standard, a new CDIO standard for sustainable development. So what is that? The CDIO stands for conceive, design, implement, and operate. And it's an educational program or standard, we could say, for engineering education, but I think it's very relevant also for other types of education. Last year, they decided on a new standard for sustainable development for the first time, and they have different rubrics, different levels in the standard. So we use these standards for our evaluation as well. And if we start at the bottom, the 0 level is that there are no sustainable development learning experiences in the program. And then level 1 is that there are minor sustainable development learning experiences. Level 2, at least one substantial learning experience. Level 3, explicit program goals and intended learning outcomes related to sustainable development, and at least 3 substantial sustainable development learning experiences. And then levels 4 and 5 are higher levels of integration. And this is a new standard, so it's still perhaps under some sort of a development. There are suggestions for making some revisions in these formulations here. I think it's useful for not only engineering programs, but all programs at all types of subjects. It can be used for benchmarking, for evaluation, but it can also be used for setting goals and targets. So this is what we've done now in our new set of targets. We say that all our engineering programs should be at least on the level 3, and all our master's programs and PhD programs should be at least on level 2. So the outcome of the evaluation was that we have partially reached our sustainable development goals for education. We cannot honestly say that we reached this goal, that it should be integrated into all programs. It's integrated into most programs, but perhaps not to the level that we want to. We can see that there's been a clear progress over the years, but the work needs to continue. So we've kept this goal that it should be integrated in all programs, but we're also specified, as I said, that all engineering programs should reach level 3 in the CDIO standards. And we also use this evaluation now as a vehicle for discussions. So there are currently a lot of meetings between our sustainability office and program directors, etc., at the schools. So based on our evaluation, there is a table we can have a discussion around these issues, how to further develop the education for sustainable development. Before I finish, I would like to say a few words about the development on a national level in Sweden. This is because we did a few years ago evaluation of integration of sustainable development in higher education in Sweden, the whole system, and it was performed by the Swedish Higher Education Authority. And the method, there was a focus on the process. So the question that we was, does the Higher Education Institute have a systematic work promoting sustainable development in education? So we didn't ask if they had achieved the goals, but is there a systematic work, a systematic process? And all higher education institutions wrote a self-assessment report answering some evaluation criteria. And then there was a panel who read all the reports and wrote a report for each higher education institute and did the assessment. And I was happy to be chairing that panel. And then the Swedish Higher Education Authority made the final decision based on our recommendation, and they followed our recommendations in all cases. And this, of course, provides a unique material for recommendations, because now we know a lot more about what seems to work at different universities, different higher education institutions of different types. So we could provide some recommendations. And these are the most important ones that universities need to decide on what they want. These are really basic management aspects, by the way, but it's interesting that it comes as something new still for many universities. So decide on overall goals. What do you want to achieve? And make sure that there are follow-up processes. It's not enough to decide on a goal. You also need to follow up the goals. And also you need to have somebody responsible for this work. So you need to create an organization for the work. It can be a sustainability office, it could be a sustainability manager or a vice president for sustainable development. It needs to be some sort of organization. And this organization and unit person must have some resources to work with as well. It's not enough to appoint a person. This person or organization needs to have some resources. Perhaps not necessarily too much, but still some resources. And then we had a long list of other recommendations. Create structures and institutions for sustainable development that are resilient to change. This is because we often saw at many universities that there had been good initiatives, good activities, and then for some reason, maybe a change in vice chancellor or whatever, activities dropped down again. And so in order to have resilient work, you need to create structures and institutions that can survive change in vice chancellors, etc. And also important to support competence development of teachers and other staff. You need to have, because sustainable development is new to many teachers, so they need to have some education in that area to feel confident to teach in the area. Thanks very much. I'll end there. Here are some publications that describes part of the work that I've talked about. Thanks a lot for your attention. I'll end there, and I'll be happy to ask questions later. But I'll hand over now to Kristina von Ölreich, our sustainability manager.
Thank you so much, Göran.
I need to stop sharing here.
Yes, we are in a learning process.
We are in the
Thank
learning
you.
process.
Yes.
Here we go. Thank you very much.
Then I will share my presentation. Just a moment. Can you see it now? Yes, I think so. I will just do a change here. So now I think I'm ready. Hi, everyone. My name is Kristina von Ölreich, and I'm working as the Sustainability Manager at KTH. And I have the responsibility for KTH Sustainability Office that you heard Göran also have mentioned before. And we are working on a central level with the integration of sustainable development into the university's operations. And I think also Göran described very well that you need to work together. This work is very important, that you work together with the administration, part of that in the university, but also, of course, you have close collaboration with education, research, and that part of the university. So in some way, we have manifested this by having a KTH Sustainability Office that includes all these different areas at the university. And that is a very good learning process. You learn a lot and understand how the university really works concerning when you're going to integrate sustainability into all our operations at the university. I'm very happy to be here today, and that I have the possibility to share our experience that we had from the work with integrating sustainability into our operations, but also looking in the future, what will be the next step for KTH. And I think you can see all the work that Göran presented is something that need to be continued. We don't start from the beginning. We have had a process, we have had a journey, and we need also, of course, to continue that. And then we will have some new areas that we more or less focus on, but still this is an ongoing process and it will in some way never end. I would just like to say that KTH has 5 campuses in the Stockholm region, and they are already very close in the city. And that is also very important for us because we want to work like one KTH, because all the different campuses are really contributing to our sustainability work. And one good example how we are working with the integration of sustainable development in our campus operation is that we have a campus plan that is running from 2018 to 2023, where we focus on all the different campuses and how they could take the lead for a sustainable development. And this work has been it was a very good process for having this campus plan. We worked together with our landlords and other stakeholders in the community, and also learned about different things, how we work, and how we can also work together in the future. So the process was very good, and we also have now a lot of projects running that is the outcome from this strategic plan for the campus activities that we have. In this work, of course, it's also very important that you have the support from the top level of the university. So KTH, we have a vision that is running to 2027 that says that KTH works for a brighter tomorrow, and that we wishes to enhance society and identify smart solutions to the grand challenges of today and of tomorrow. And that is one way of describing that we are working with sustainable development, and that is very important for today and also for tomorrow. So we have a vision that still is running. And then also our president, Sigrid Karlsson, she's also a very important support by her leadership that we should work with sustainable development and integrate that into our operations. And as a technical university, we have a special responsibility for developing and also communicating the knowledge needed to promote such sustainable development. And therefore, on a strategic level, Sigrid have pointed out 4 pillars that we should prioritize in our work. And that is about sustainability, equality, internationalization, and digitization. So this is something that we, of course, have a lot of support because this is something that will go through all the strategic documents that we develop on different levels at KTH. And then also we have had, and you know that, Göran, we had a very important discussion also how we should look at the concept or the definition of sustainable development and how you can translate that to different kinds of operation that is ongoing at KTH. So we worked out, you, Göran, worked a lot with the guideline, how we also can think about this definition of sustainable development, and also how we have some good experience, how we really can work with it on a practical level and get a better understanding what kind of UN sustainability goals that is connected to different operations. And it includes education, research, the collaboration we have, but also our traveling, procurement, how we use our building in a sustainability way, and so on. So this have been, of course, a very good tool when we have these sustainability goals going on, and to have good dialogue and discussion inside the university to really understand how we should map this. And we learned also new things, of course. We open up our eyes and we can see that we need different collaboration in the future if we would like to enhance and working towards the sustainability goals. And I think it's also important to highlight that we have, of course, a lot of stakeholders that think that it's very important that KTH is working with sustainable development and the integration of that in our operations. We have a regulation for higher education, that statute, that is important that we integrate sustainability into our education program and courses. We are working, of course, according to the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. We have a lot of collaboration with the private and public sector that also think this is important, of course. We have also the Swedish Constitution, where it's statute that all the public authorities should contribute to a sustainable development. We have different common values, value base for government employees. And we also have a Swedish environmental code where we have put together all the different kinds of environmental legislation in one code. And that is in some way unique for Sweden. And then also we have an environmental management system according to ISO 14001. And that means that we have a certification and we have external auditors coming once a year and see that we are maintaining and developing our environmental management system. And to that, we also have a Swedish regulation that says that all the public authorities, 186 in Sweden, should have an environmental management system in place as a base for a systematical way of handling the environmental and the sustainable impact you have from your university. We also, of course, have a lot of work together with staff and researcher and students. They are very important stakeholders, of course. And then we also take part in different rankings. And one rankings that we have been taking part in for 3 years now is the Times Higher Education Impact Ranking according to the SDGs. And then also the Swedish EPA has a ranking according to the Swedish regulation on environmental management system. So they rank all the public authorities that is reporting according to this law. So this is also very important, and we can see in the future, and we can see already now that we have a lot of requirements and things coming from our stakeholders. It's happening a lot. We can see concerning the climate issue, for an example, that is happening a lot of things around us, and that influence the internal work we are doing with sustainability issues. Göran described for you that we have a policy for sustainable development for KTH, and that is the university board that decide about this policy. And I don't need to say so much, but I think it's very important to point it out that we really would like to be the leading technical university in sustainable development. And that also needs a lot of dialogue and discussion what we mean by leading technical university. And in the end, in some way, we have our stakeholders, and they give us, of course, information, and they guide us how they think we are working with this issue. But still, it's so important to put all this together. We have two different parts concerning how we are working: education, research, and collaboration. And we need also, of course, support from the other part that is connected to our services. And the policy we have, we need maybe to update it a little, because we have new sustainability objectives that also Göran highlighted before. So that is also a part that need to be changed, but still it's the same operations we are focusing on. It's a lot of things that we need to continue to work with. And then, of course, we have some new challenges, and we have also seen that it has been a change internally in the university, but also, of course, the stakeholders and the surroundings, what is happening now. We have COVID, Corona, of course, is something that influences everyone. And we also have seen how much work we put in the climate issue and also other areas. Of course, we have looked at that when we were thinking how we should formulate the new university sustainability objectives. But now we have them in place. So we have university-wide sustainability objectives that will be running between 2021 and 2025. And we also have climate objectives that is running a little bit longer, because we have these international agreements and how we could be climate neutral in the future. So we can see that the new university-wide objectives is about, you can say, 3 pillars we are focusing on. It's sustainability, gender equality, and the climate neutrality bullets. So this is also how we have tried to integrate the work we are doing with gender equality, because I'm representing the sustainability office, but we also have a gender equality office that is working with this issue and to integrate them in our operations. And now this was a way to working together, because this is, of course, influencing the work we are doing, and we need a further collaboration. So that is why we have also highlighted gender more than we did before. And then for the overall objectives, we have sub-targets that we have developed. And then we also have an action plan where we describe overall measures that needs to be taken and who has the responsibility for making this happen. And we have learned the lesson in some way that it's good to have sub-targets, because otherwise the time is just running away, and then suddenly it's 2025 and maybe you have a lot of things to do, so you can reach the goals that you have pointed out some years ago. So that is one way also to support the following up part of the sustainability objectives. I will not go very deep into these 6 universities wide objectives that we have, but I think I will show you them and the different areas that we have focus on, and you will see that you will, of course, as Göran presented, it's some areas that is still here. We need to continue the work. So we have 6 universities objectives, and the first 3 is about education, and then we have research, and then we also have collaboration, that we should continue the work with the sustainable development issues, gender, and we should also strengthen that with the climate neutral, towards a climate neutral society. So this is the 3 overall goals we have for these different operations. And then also we are focused on how we should work internally in our organization. And then you can see that we still need to continue how we should integrate sustainable development, the gender perspective, but also work with the climate perspective into our operations. And that means all the operation we have, we need to continue to work with integration in education, in research and collaboration. And then we also need to integrate that when we are handling the impact from our own operations that we have from our services. And so that is one important bullet also, how we continue the work with the integration part, and then also how we strengthen the employees' knowledge and that we give them conditions so they can contribute to this work based on the role they have at the university. And then we have also pointed out that it's very important in the future that we will be good at management with the resources that we need for doing the work we do at the university. And that is about how we are handling our buildings in a sustainable manner, the business trips, and also the transport that we have, our procurement, how we are handling waste issues, also food and dining, as well as biodiversity and the work with ecosystem services. And then we have a goal also, overall goal, that is connected to the climate issue and how we can be a leading technical university for climate change and climate neutral society. So this is the six new universities-wide sustainability objectives that we have in KTH. And then we have also targets, sub-targets to each of these 6 objectives. And to that, we also have connected different kinds of measures that will be taken so we can reach the sustainability goals. And this was also a process to develop this at the same time. We were focusing on the different kinds of objectives that we wanted to have at the university. And then also at the same time, we were out in dialogue with different functions at the university and discussed at the same time, what kind of measure do we need? What kind of indicators do we need to have for making this happen? Because we can have a lot of nice objectives, but if we don't know what we need to do and what measure we need to take, then it will not happen so much. So that was one way also to have this discussion at the same time. And you can, of course, do this in different way, but for us that already had an ongoing work, it was very fruitful also to discuss the measure that is connected to these sustainability objectives. So I think we have a vision, we have a campus plan, we have new sustainability goals, we have also a policy for sustainable development. And also for handling this in a systematical manner, we have also as a base an environmental management system according to ISO 14001, and also that we have a regulation that we need to follow this standard. And that is something that all the public authorities has as a requirement in Sweden. So we have integrated this systematic way of working into our ordinary planning and following up process at KTH. And it's described here, as you can see. In January and February, we always following up how it's going with our sustainability objectives. And we also reporting the last year outcome. And we have a lot of reporting, both internally and also externally. We have to report to the Swedish EPA, and we also have to report in our annual report to the government about our sustainability work. And then we always have a management review at different levels on the schools, but also on the top level to look what the result from the follow-up is telling us and how we should continue the work and what we need to change to move this forward. So that is also very important that we have that in different level in the organization with different managers. And then we always have an external audit in April because we have this certification. And then we start to also, of course, work with the planning and the budget process for the next year. And at the same time, our president also have school dialogues with the deans to get an understanding what they are planning to do next year, but also what they're doing during the year. And that continues in October. And then in November, we always have our own internal environmental audit where we are looking at different areas that we are focusing on to highlight where we need to have improvements. And then we have the same management review in December where we look at the result from the internal audit and also decide about new action plans for the next year that we will work with. So this is very important to show that we have integrated this work so it not will be a parallel environmental management system, but it's connected to our ordinary planning and budget process at KTH. And Göran also told that it's important to think about the governance structure and how we have organized the work. Because in the end, it's still about the staff, the manager, that they need to support, they need to think about these activities in their daily work. So we have a lot of documentation describing different roles and what they have for kind of responsibility concerning to the sustainability work at KTH. And we have the university board that is decide about our sustainability policy, and they also have a lot of reporting on how the work is going towards the sustainability objectives that we have pointed out. And then we have the president and the deans. Of course, they have responsibility to working according to the sustainability objectives, but they also have the responsibility to maintain and develop our environmental management system. We have different vice presidents that Göran described. We have also decanus and the faculty council that also we pointed out their responsibility. We have a university director. We have a sustainability manager that has a sustainability office that is working with integration in all the operation we have at KTH. And we also have the responsibility for maintaining and sustain the environmental management system. According to ISO 40001, we are working and supporting all the schools and also the top level with this systematical work that we need to have. And then also we work in different projects. Göran showed a lot of things that have happened, and that is a lot of staff at the sustainability office, but also of course at the schools that is working together to make this happen. So we have a very good overview, and we are trying to work in a more holistic way and also see how we can make this happen. So it should be everyone in the organization in some way that have the possibility to work with this and also feel that this is important. And that is, of course, the challenge. It follows always also if you have a good environmental management system in place, a lot of documentation that where you can verify that you have an environmental management system in place, and also that you develop that, so it really supports the work you're doing with the sustainability objectives. So here you can see a lot of different documents that is very important for us and that we update and improve, of course. I think that is a part where we have described how we are working internally, how we make this happen at KTH, our organization. We have an environmental management system in place, and we work a lot together with the schools and the top level at KTH. And I think also that it's so much going on that is connected to sustainability at the schools. If you look at the research we have and the collaboration with different stakeholders and also the research, of course, a lot of that is connected to sustainability, even if we don't always describe it or communicate it externally in that way. And that is also a challenge sometimes. When we have our external audit coming to KTH once a year, they say, wow, you do a lot of good things, but we didn't know about it. It's not always communicated. So that is, I think, a challenge. I would just like to highlight some important collaboration that we also have had during the 2 last years. And we have in Sweden for the universities a climate framework where 37, it's now Swedish universities and colleagues, we have together created a combined climate framework to serve as the basis for individual climate strategies. And it started like a collaboration between Chalmers, another technical university in Sweden, and KTH, where we thought this was very important. And then we, together with different kinds of the sustainability manager and people from the other universities, worked out together this climate framework. So the presidents from the different universities could sign that, but we also worked out a guideline to support the universities to develop their own individual climate strategies. And we're also working, we have a lot of work, of course, on a national and international level. And one I just would like to highlight is the International Sustainable Campus Network, ICN, where we also have a good collaboration with different universities from different parts of the world. I think I already have described this when I was showing you the other slide, but I think it's important just to highlight that we have this climate framework. The universities are working to develop their own individual climate strategy, but still we have some requirements, and that is that all the universities that have signed this framework should work with education, research, collaboration, business travels, and the energy use, because these are considered central for all higher education institutions. And we have a network with all the manager, sustainability manager or environmental manager at the universities discussing this also. And that network is because we have this regulation that all the universities and all the public authorities should have an environmental management system. So we have networks meeting, and of course we have discussed this, and we can see where we have our biggest sustainability impact. It is in these areas, even if it's different a little from university to university, of course. So this is the key areas where you have in the guideline, how you can work with them and integrating sustainable development in these operations. And then I also would like to highlight that we also working, of course, we have our strategy concerning the climate change and how we can work towards the agreements that we have on a national and international level. So in our new sustainability objectives, we have integrated the climate objectives. They were separate before, but to make it easier to have one document, we integrated them. And here you can see that we have a timeline for the last sustainability objectives that is connected just to the climate issue. And we have pointed out to 2045 where we would like to be, and also what will happen after. I think the time will soon end. I will just highlight that one important way also to work with the integration of sustainable development in our operations is to take part in this ranking I mentioned before, because then we can compare with other universities, we can have a lot of benchmarking, and we can also see from this ranking and the result, we can also learn a lot, and we take it back internally into our environmental management system, and we do improvements that we can also use in other ways. So this is also part of our sustainability work, to take part in rankings and compare with other universities. One very important stakeholder that we are working with is the collaboration we had with students concerning our sustainability objectives. And we have KTH students for sustainability, and we're also, of course, working with our union, how we can together moving forward according to our sustainability objectives. And we have a lot of good work and projects that is running with the students. So I think I will stop here, and then I will just share some conclusions about the sustainability work. I have been working with this in different universities and different organizations since 1995. I have also worked in the UN and on the EU level with the integration of sustainable development and so on. And what I think is very important, what I can see, is that sustainability work, it is not a project. It has to be integrated in the university's core business. It's very important to understand that is an ongoing work. It's very important to have strong leadership and commitment, and involving the staff and the relevant stakeholders in this work. We need to do this together, of course, this journey. It's also important to highlight good examples to communicate the performance, that it's also moving forward. And I think it's also important that it's not the manager or just the top level that have the responsibility for this issue. We all have that responsibility and really try to contribute in the daily activities. It's where you can see the difference. And we are all world citizens, and we need also to act from there. So I think together, these important networks that we had with other universities and other networks, of course, are very important. And that is something that we need to think on in the future, how we can develop our way of collaborate and find maybe new partners also to make this happen. I think I will stop there, and I thank so much again that I have the possibility to be here and have this presentation together with Göran. So.
Thanks, Christina. That was really great. And Göran as well. If I ask you, Göran, to put your camera back on too. Fabulous. Thank you. Thanks so much for two really insightful presentations, and I'm sure inspiring to many of us, the huge amount of work that KTH has done in this sector already. I've got lots of questions here in the Q&A and that have come in on the email as well. So I hope you're both ready for grilling with questions now too. If I can start off with yourself, Göran, there's a number of people who've been asking for you to maybe just give a little bit more detail on how you perform the sustainability mapping of the courses. I know this is something that a lot of universities are looking at, using different methodologies, some of them incredibly complex, and it would be great to get a little bit more insight into how KTH went about that.
Mm-hmm. Well, for the mapping of courses, we we put up the criteria that at least one learning outcome, all courses should have learning outcomes. So at least one learning outcome should be related to environment, environmental management, or sustainable development. So just by sort of inspecting the learning outcomes, we can decide on that. It's self-reporting. So the course responsible persons that are course responsible or program directors can tick a box that this course is it's about sustainable development. And then we do regular reviews also to make sure that the marking is relevant.
Great, you preempted one of my follow-up questions there. Thank you. And I wonder, there's also a question as to whether, how you measure whether something is substantial or minor in terms of how it delivers on sustainability. And I wonder if you could touch upon as well, whether you look at the quality then of what's being delivered. I know that's incredibly difficult, but the quality of what's going in there, and if so, how you go about that as well.
Regarding minor or substantial, again, we can look at the learning outcomes of the course. If there are 5 learning outcomes for a 5-week course and one of them is related to sustainable development, well, then it's probably a minor contribution. Whereas if 4 or 5 of the learning outcomes is related to sustainability, then it's a substantial contribution, learning experience. And then, of course, there can be gray zone, but in most cases, it's fairly straightforward. Regarding the quality, no, we don't, and that is a problem. I would have liked to see that we could have engaged students more in this evaluation, because now we see very much from the perspective of the teachers and the program directors, but we don't so much have the perspective of the students. So in the future evaluations, I think it would be great if we could somehow involve also students' perspective. We do it to some extent through the midterm evaluation, because there we ask all students, about their general experience. So it's not related to specific courses, but it's related, we know which program they're in. So it's related to the program and their general experience. So that's useful also in the dialogue with the program directors.
It's great. It's as if you set these up, because my next question for you, Göran, was about students. So I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about how undergraduates can participate in different elements of sustainability. Obviously, there'll be the teaching and learning components. Do they have opportunities to get involved in sustainability in other ways within KTH?
Yes, it's largely through these student organizations that they can get engaged through the student union, and there are also specific organizations outside the student union. And we try to support these activities by sort of, if they ask for funding for specific activities or for coffee or etc., we can support with that, or funding hiring of rooms, etc., things like that we can support. So that's one important issue as well. And then we also, to some extent, we could do that more, but to some extent we are also employing students to help out at the sustainability office. I don't know if you want to add something there, Christina.
No, I think that is good, because of course we are working together with the landlords, and we connect the education and research to the campus activities. We have students looking at how we can have more bikes and sharing bike system, and we also have students that we have supported with looking at the restaurants, how they can take away plastic and things like that, and they are also helping us with the waste system that we have with food waste now that we have at KTH. So we involve them, yes, and they are very important. We don't need to have a special organization because they have now their organization. They are quite new. So we come together and they support us. But I still think that we can work more together with them. It's more about the time, maybe. And I think also that we have a national engagement, Göran, the climate students on a national level, and they are ranking the universities. So we have just sent in what we are doing concerning climate issues. They also help us to improve our work.
I think those are really valuable positions, though, and they really help to build these kind of sustainable development competencies in our graduates, right? These kind of practical engagements that we have. Do you have experience of KTH of trying to measure those, whether they're within the activities and curriculum, or whether, I know you mentioned earlier, surveying with graduates and alumni as well to see how they're using the skills that they learned. I know it's something that we've been looking at, and how do we help students to identify these kind of competencies when they're developing them, and it's incredibly hard. It'd be great to hear about any experience you have in that.
Well, I think these are difficult questions, and I think these are areas where we would have liked to do more. I think involving students and helping them in attaining, get involved in different sustainability activities. I think we could do more. So I'm open for suggestions there.
No, it sounds like something we all need to work on together, Göran. Don't worry. I think it's a challenge. Sorry, Christina, I don't know if you wanted to add to that.
No, I think I agree fully.
Maybe just to move on to the kind of stakeholders and partners you were talking about, Christina, it would be nice to hear maybe some more specific examples about some of your collaborations with the private sector and what those objectives are and how they perhaps work in terms of the sustainability agenda.
Yes, I think maybe we can take this together, but I think at KTH we have, I think it's around 10 strategic partners or stakeholders that come from the private sector. It's the old Swedish companies that have worked long with technical issues. And I think that is in one way, because this is the strategic partners that our president have pointed out. And of course, that's a collaboration concerning research and how you can use students also, and also what they would like us to work with concerning different issues. So that is one kind of very important collaboration. I don't know, Göran, if you want to say something more about that, but we have had that. And then you have different collaboration with the community, with Stockholm Stad and so on, and other stakeholders on the school level. And then we have it in both a national and international level. And then I know they are working with, maybe you, Göran, can tell a little bit about the Hennes och Mauritz, this initiative we have with them concerning climate issues. That is one good example, I think.
Yes, I think, as a technical university, we have a long tradition of working together with stakeholders of different types. And I think it's important to do that in the sustainability area, because to my experience, it's very important to have people from industry coming into education and saying, this is important. This sustainability is important for us. So, for example, to my experience from teaching students in computer science, for example, it is one thing if some associate professor in sustainable development comes and say, this is important. It's another thing if somebody from Google or Ericsson comes in and say, hey, this is important. You are going to work with this when you graduate, whether you like it or not. This is part of your tasks. And that is an important signal. So for us, I think it's important to work with industry and other stakeholders in our educational programs to get their perspectives through guest lecture or through providing examples of project work, etc. And then in research, of course, this is also so important to work together. I mean, for we are in for a transformation of society. And therefore, we need to have work together with stakeholders who are going to transform. And we, of course, must be part of that change and work together with them in transdisciplinary research as well. And that's a balance always, because we still need to keep our independence and be critical about the developments as well. So we both need to work together and be independent actors, and that's a challenge sometimes. And then for our own sustainability work, I think one difference between Swedish universities and I think, for example, most universities in the UK is that we don't own our own buildings, for example. So therefore, we must work very closely with the landlords, and we must work very closely together with the city related to planning issues, etc., because we don't own the land. So there is a need for collaboration with also for the direct environmental impacts at our university.
Great, thanks. I think that just highlights the really complex engagements that universities have across all of those different sectors as well. And as you said, especially as a technological university, that engagement with the private sector is really strong and really important. I wonder if I can come back to that point you made about research collaborations. I know that wasn't the topic that you focused on today, Joran, but I wonder if you could maybe tell us a little bit about how you've mapped the research at KTH against sustainable development goals or targets.
We related to sustainable development goals, we are doing a number of things. I don't think there is one single indicator that can be used somehow, but we're working with bibliometric indicators. We started developing our own, well, we did develop our own bibliometric measures for publications related to sustainable development. Now, Elsevier has developed a bibliometric method, which is also used by Times Higher Education. So, in a way, whether we like it or not, it may become as an informal standard on how to do that. So we're using that at the moment. We're using that in parallel to our own bibliometric measures. And then this helps us in mapping then different projects, publications and projects related to the Sustainable Development Goals. But we also see that there are a number of projects and publications that don't get included in these bibliometrics. So that's not the whole story. We need to add other information. And again, it's sort of self-reporting. We ask researchers to provide us with information on projects, and we gather examples of how we contribute to different sustainable development goals.
Great, thanks. And again, I think just a challenge that we're all facing on how to measure this when there's so much good work going on. And often our colleagues don't even recognise that they're perhaps doing work that's related to a specific SDG and trying to capture it. On that kind of same issue of staff engagement, it was great to hear about all the resourcing, especially for capacity building with staff for education and sustainable development in particular. And I wonder if you found that, all the staff are really enthusiastic about embedding sustainable development, if there are particular challenges or barriers you've come up against, and how you've managed to deal with those, or if there's particular ways of building capacity that people have found most appealing and that you would recommend for other institutions.
Yes, that was a good question, because everyone, of course, is not thinking that this is the most important thing that they would focus on their daily activities. But I think when you really integrate this in different kinds of strategies, so it will come in a natural way, then people are working, of course, according to that. We have so many different kinds of functions and people working with in different areas. And I think one thing that I have noticed and that we have started to do is when you are have workshops, maybe with different kinds of departments, depending on what they are working with. If you start to look at the process, how it begins from the beginning. For an example, if you have students coming to Sweden, you start to look at how you have signed the agreement with that university, how you do some preparation. You can ask in that agreement how that university is working with sustainability. Then they also will look for program courses, and then you can support that they will choose sustainability courses. And then they do some preparation for coming to Sweden, and how can we show our sustainability work when they are coming here. And then they stay here, and how can we then support them with apps and see how they can buy sustainability food, and how they can travel in Stockholm with the subway. And then also they write down what they have kind of experience. If you look at the process where people are working in that process, they really would like to contribute. So we have had these different kinds of workshops. We are leading by the manager that should describe what are the most important sustainability goals that I think is connected to the work we are doing. And then you also look at the process, the different steps, and ask the staff, you are working in this step and you are working here, how can we contribute in the whole chain? So this is just an example of where people get a little bit more enthusiastic, because you are talking about the daily activities. And I think that is just one way to show that it should not be too complicated, because we have so much to do. And then we have also looked at the research and the process for program and courses and so on. That is just one way. And then I think you really need to have good support and leadership, and you need to be a little bit stubborn and maybe a little bit also brave to drive this, even if you have some resistance coming on. And then you need to have a good fantasy and maybe to take other ways to canalize that. But I think you should have a good dialogue and ask the staff what they think is a good way forward. You don't need to have all the solutions. So then, Jörn, we also, of course, we have courses for teachers in sustainability that they can also have, but still, it's sometimes problem with the time. We have a lot of teaching, you have had Corona and so on. So it's also always about how you prioritize and the resources you have. We will come back to that. I don't know, Göran, what you would like to add to that, but.
Well, I think I can add a couple of things. I think top management is important here, that the top management continues saying, okay, this is important, so that the message is clear there. Also, external stakeholders, if you can use external stakeholders coming in and saying this, we think this is important. If industry comes in and saying this, I think this alumni surveys were important, that we could show that 3/4 of our alumni are working with sustainability, come across sustainability challenges, then that's an important message as well. I think, as Christina mentioned, perhaps asking people how they want to do it can be a good strategy sometimes. When we started our work on education, we were careful not to be too prescriptive on how sustainable development should be integrated. So we said it shall be integrated, and we will follow this up. And we didn't say exactly how. Some people wanted us to say that there should be a decision that it should be one specific course or something else. But we thought that it's better to leave it to the program directors and teachers who know their programs, who know their students, to come up with how it shall be integrated, whether it's one specific course or integrated in several courses, but it should be integrated in the overall program. And then it's up to the program directors how to do it. So that was a very conscious choice we did, which I think was a good choice at the moment.
Apologies, I forgot to unmute. So I just time for a couple of more questions. So I'm going to try and get to the ones, especially that are in the Q&A. There's a question I'm just going to read out here for you, Christina, from David Scott, that talks about the ISO 14001 and basically pointing out, as we know, that it's incredibly difficult and a huge administrative burden to keep on top of all that recording, and great work, particularly for some small companies and things. And they wonder whether the academic knowledge gained from achieving this could be a way of effectively engaging with external commercial stakeholders.
Yes, I think that was a very good suggestion, because I think when you look at this environmental management system, and I think we are always talking about that is a burden, it's a lot of documentation, but I think that have changed during the years. I started to work with that 1995, and in the beginning it was a lot of requirements of documentation, but from the learning process and developing on international best practice, it's now more focused on the effects, the results, the outcome, and you don't need to have everything documented, procedures for everything, if you can show good result. So I think if we could start to see that it's how you implement and establish the environmental management system from the beginning, and how you can do that by integrating it from the beginning in the ordinary processes that you have at the university. From the beginning, it was always parallel system, but now they have understand that if you want to have a certification, then try to implement it at once in the process that or the operation you already have at the university. But I think you can learn a lot and work together with other. And I think also I have worked with small companies and so on. Then it's less work in some way. So it depends on how bureaucratic, of course, you want to do it. Then you need documentation. And I think we have used that a lot when we have had to deliver documents to Times Higher Education Impact Ranking. We already had a lot of documentation that was good. We can just put it in. They ask for policies and they ask for measure things and so on. So you can also use it in different way to communicate the work you're doing.
Thanks, Christina, and a very positive outlook on that. I like it a lot, and good to hear it's becoming less onerous documentation-wise as well. I'm going to try and combine a couple of these questions. There's a question here that talks about, I know you've spoken, Christina, a lot about the different networks and global networks that KTH are part of. And it would be really interesting to maybe hear more about how you're managing or promoting sustainable development within the kind of more global outreach perspective, so thought leadership and research side of things. And then I'll snatch into there another question that's there about, are KTH open to partnerships with other universities, which someone asked very early on. So you're obviously doing a good job of building enthusiasm.
Mm. Yes, of course, we want to have more partners, and I think we need to have more collaboration and really come together, because we are a sector and we have the same challenges. So of course, we are open up for new collaboration. That should be great. I think this initiative and how we are working together, we also learn a lot with all these web seminars. So yes, we really would like to work together, and this is an invitation then to contact us. so we can learn from others. It's so important. And then we have, of course, a lot of different kinds of networks where we work in a national level. And now I just described the networks we have connected to the international sustainability work. And then we also have on other levels, you have Nordic networks, we have CSR, you know, maybe about that, this European technical network also, and we have SDSN that you send this invitation and so on. But still, this is just where we at the Sustainability Office are working with, and then of course you are next to a lot of other networks concerning how you collaborate concerning research and education and so on. But it's a lot connected to EU, of course.
Yes, and sustainability is increasingly integrated into those networks and collaborations. And KTH also has some strategic university partnerships, and also there we should integrate sustainability more and more, I think.
Yeah, we have the sustainability hub. We're working with African countries and in China, and we, as Göran described, pointed out strategic countries where we are working with. But it's very easy to connect because everyone is working some way with sustainability issues and want to learn and are very positive to share. So that is a good way to start collaboration.
Yeah, and I would say we always find everyone very willing to share their experiences as well. I'm going to be a little bit naughty because I realize that it is now the time to end the webinar, but there's one really good last question, which I would like if you guys don't mind. So it just says, looking back on your sustainability journey, is there something that you regret doing or not doing so far?
That was a very good question because
you can always work more, and we should probably have worked more with getting more people, more staff involved in the work. So getting internal stakeholders more on board. That is difficult because you cannot get all 5,000 employees on board, but more people would probably have been good.
yes, and I think also that we have learned how important it is with the following up part. We can have a lot of plans and so on, but still it's the measures, the concrete measures, that is the one that's you really need and to show results. So also strengthen the use of indicators and how we can follow up and also communicate it. It's always a challenge, the communication part, both internally and externally. And then it starts, of course, inside university. It's always about us. We can have so much nice technical solutions and so on, but if no one would like to use it, it doesn't matter. So that is, of course, a challenge. And just to continue that, to work with the staff. I think that is the most important thing. And it needs time, of course.
Great. I think those were very perfect answers to finish off today's webinar. So it just waits for me to say thank you so much, Christina and Göran, for giving up your time today to share the experiences of KTH. It's been really great to hear about the real practical elements of what you do and the challenges you have, and to hear about people who are walking the walk and not just talking the talk. I particularly like your reference, Christina, to this being core business and not just a project, because I think that's such an important mindset change that we need to have within our institutions. So really appreciate your insights, and I know we've benefited lots from them today as well. So huge thank you to you both. It just remains for me to remind you all that there are 2 more webinars coming up in the series. So please take the time to sign up for those. Our colleagues at the University of Stellenbosch will be here at the same time next week, talking about their fantastic program where they work with communities around South Africa, looking at the social impact of their work and engagements. And the following week, which will be a little bit earlier in the day, to accommodate our colleagues at Peking University, who'll be looking at the interdependencies of SDGs particularly around carbon systems. Thank you very much to all of you for joining us again today, and we hope you enjoyed the webinar, and we look forward to seeing you all again next week.